Today I'm going to be making some UV resin earrings out of UV resin and some jewelry wire and a mold. If you watched my previous video from last week, I actually used some jewelry wire and made a shape and then smushed it down to be flat. Well, this time I wanted to explore some more ways that you could use this wire in the UV resin. So I made some different types of shapes. I sped this part up so it wouldn't take so long, but I just kind of did zigzag shape a little bit with rounded edges, just like that. And then I kind of spread it out a little bit to fit the mold that I was going to use. And you can kind of just bend it and work with it to get it the shape you want. I have these little metal gold embeds, and I was kind of experimenting with which ones I wanted to add, but I decided I didn't really like the suns with it. And there's some little stars in one of these compartments, so I got those out and used those instead. They're in that compartment right there. There's so many different things you could do with these and so many designs you could make, but this is just what I chose to do. And I'll put 2 stars in each earring. I was also trying to figure out how I could get it to look right and where I should put the stars. And so this is the mold I chose to use. They're long rectangles, and then the smallest one's actually a little square. So I just elongated these to make them fit the mold. And they're the perfect width. And then I'm going to use pliers because these are so tiny my fingers weren't working to get them where I needed them to go, so I used pliers to place the stars. You can place them wherever you want to. You could also just do gold foil. If you don't have these stars, you could put little pieces of gold foil throughout. It would look cute that way too. So I finished both of those earrings. There's not UV resin in it yet. I'm just putting the wire right directly into the mold. So I cut little pieces of the wire, and then I put little stars and I put them into the mold. The pliers make this part so much easier. I was struggling. You can also use tweezers if you have those. I use tweezers for a lot of my resin projects. And then you just position them the way you want them. And the next one, we're actually going to make a round circle curlicue. That's what I'm going to call it. I don't really know what you're supposed to call it, but it's like a spiral. And you just start with a very small circle in the middle. And then you're going to use your jewelry pliers to very carefully move it around. The wire will be right up against each other for most of it. And you're just making a curlicue. What do you guys call it? Tell me in the comments. I know it's like a spiral, but I've always just called them curlicues. And then you'll just use the jewelry pliers that work best for this are these rounded ones because they're going to make your circle without bending your wire all to pieces. Then once you get down to the edge, I'm just going to very carefully use my pliers to push that down flush against the rest of the wire. And then once you're done with that, put it right into the mold. You'll want to make sure that you measure both of your wire the same length so they'll turn out the same size. So for this one, I did a big wire and then a small curlicue on the top. And now it's time to add our UV resin. Can you use epoxy resin for this? Of course. Just fill it just like we are with this and let it set overnight. But for UV resin, you can get them done immediately. So if you're using UV resin, you just put your UV light on it and then you'll have your earrings done right then. But yes, you can use epoxy resin for this as well. So the cool thing about this is these metal embeds are not moving because they're setting on that silicone mold and they just stayed right where they were, which is so perfect. Sometimes if you're using other things, they're going to move around, but these did not. So I have those just setting directly on the dry bottom of the mold, and then I put UV resin on top of it. And then you just fill it little by little until you have your resin flush with the top of your mold so that it's completely even, so you're not overfilling it or underfilling it. See how the stars aren't even moving when I'm pouring this in. I was pretty excited about that. A lot of times when you put your resin in, your little embeds are going to be moving around. But I didn't even have to arrange one of them after this. And then, of course, there'll be a little bit of bubbles come up from underneath those metal pieces that you put in. So go ahead and take your lighter and pop those bubbles. And then I always take a toothpick if I see, sometimes the lighter doesn't get the bubbles that are towards the bottom. So you can take a toothpick and then bring those bubbles to the surface. And sometimes along the edges, they want to stay there. And then just take your lighter and pop it again. Now, since I laid the metal in first, I just kind of shook it and just kind of did this just a little bit, just to make sure that the resin was going to go all the way in there. And then I put it under the UV light for about 3 minutes. And then I'm going to flip it over. I always do this when I'm using UV resin in a clear mold. Flip it over and then put it under there for a couple minutes on the back of it. Now it's time to take them out of the mold. And then I think they turned out really cute, but I'm just going to flip them upside down. And because they were in the mold, I always feel better if I just put them under the UV light for a minute or two without them being in the mold. I love how they all turned out. If you all decide to try this jewelry wire thing, please put some pictures in my community. You can find that by going to my YouTube channel and clicking on the community tab. You can actually post your creations on my page. I'd love to see them. Put it under the UV light for a minute or two once it's out of the mold. So there's lots of different colors of jewelry wire that you can get. You could put a whole bunch of different colors in here, any type of shape that you want. And now we're going to go ahead and put our jump ring and earring hook on our earring. And then once you close that up, if you want to put a little dab of UV resin on that opening and then cure it, that will keep your jump ring on and very secure. So this is my scraper I like to use to clean up my jewelry. This one didn't need it, but I just wanted to show you. And then this is the finished product. They all turned out really cute. I want to see your designs. Let me see what you've created. Put it on my community. Okay, so this is the completely finished product in the natural light. I like to show you in the natural light because I think it's pretty. I have a ton of UV resin and epoxy resin videos on my channel. Please like and subscribe and have a blessed day.